Patrick Mahomes is a system QB, and in the next 10 minutes, I'll explain why. Welcome back to the Green Beans Go channel. It's your host, me, and if this is your first video from the Green Beans Go channel, I'm going to say I'm sorry. Also, be patient with me. This is my opinion, and opinions can be debated, and that's what the comment section is for. So if you think I have posed statistics and anecdotal evidence that is not congruent with the actual reality of the NFL and of Patrick Mahomes, please write a comment. Let's have a conversation. I can handle it. So how do we get here? Why am I making this full-length YouTube video trying to convince you that Patrick Mahomes is overrated and is a system QB? Well, because the other night on TikTok, I posted a video on my channel calling Patrick Mahomes a system QB and saying he was overrated. And this was because I watched the Miami Dolphins offense completely change when Tyreek Hill went down with an injury in that game against the Titans. And it got me thinking, and this is something I've thought for a long time, that Patrick Mahomes was overrated. And I've never thought about the importance of Tyreek Hill to that team. Of course, people are going to come in here and say, well, he didn't have Tyreek Hill last year. Look what he was able to do, win the Super Bowl. I get that. We'll cover all of that in just a second. But after I posted the TikTok, my comments were flooded with people calling me a clown, saying I knew nothing about football, saying that this was a horrendous take, saying the jump from Alex Smith to Mahomes was insane, which is actually not true, and I'll show you why in just a second, saying no QB has ever done what Mahomes has been able to do, which is just wrong, and saying that this is a hack take, but it's not even a take in general, and when I presented an actual take to him, he still wasn't satisfied. So that is why we find ourselves right here for this video. So what is a system QB? We're going to have a definition before we even argue it, which you should always do. A system quarterback is a football quarterback who flourishes under a particular offensive system, specifically one that focuses on passing. The term is often seen as a pejorative or an insult or a negative or a discredit, for it implicitly downplays a quarterback's talent or skill by implying that a successful offense is due to a scheme or that the quarterback is successful due to his employment under specific circumstances. So, my claim is that Patrick Mahomes is a product of a system. This definition of system QB describes Patrick Mahomes, and I will explain why. Let's start with some background on Patrick Mahomes. He was drafted in 2017, spent a year behind Alex Smith, and then has played from 2018 till present day, playing for 5.75 years if you count 75% of this season, and he's only missed 2 games in his career. His head coach has always been Andy Reid. Andy Reid came in 2013 and has been the head coach ever since. His offensive coordinator had always been Eric Bieniemy until this year when Bieniemy left to go be the assistant coach and offensive coordinator for the Commanders. And before, this is where it gets kind of confusing, before Eric Bieniemy took over in 2018, Eric Bieniemy was the running backs coach. He came over with Andy Reid in 2013. So Bieniemy had been in the system the whole time Andy Reid had. He just got promoted to offensive coordinator the same year that Patrick Mahomes became starting quarterback. Matt Nagy was the offensive coordinator for Andy Reid and the Chiefs from 2013 to 2018. And then Matt Nagy leaves to go be the head coach of the Bears in 2018. So all of these guys were very familiar with each other, very familiar with what Andy Reid wanted to do, very familiar with the Chiefs. And Patrick Mahomes walked into a system that had been heavily established in 2018. So Matt Nagy is now back as the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs this year. He returns this year when he was previously the offensive coordinator. So a little confusing, a little tangled web there, but ultimately, we have a pretty set in stone system when Patrick Mahomes walks in 2018. Let's talk a little bit about Andy Reid pre-Chiefs, because I do think this matters. In 1997, he becomes the quarterback coach for the Packers, and he inherits Brett Favre as the quarterback who had just won 2 back-to-back MVPs and would go on to win his 3rd in 1997. So Andy Reid kind of gets this blessing of working with one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and I don't know if that's something we need to debate, as his first year coaching with the Packers. Then in 1999, he joins the Eagles and becomes the head coach of the Eagles. And if you look at the quarterbacks that Andy Reid coached that played more than 10 games for him, it was Donovan McNabb, who Andy Reid drafted in 1999, and Michael Vick, who was already a veteran by that point and had played with the Falcons for the majority of his career and then came to the Eagles. So if you want to talk about the quarterbacks that Andy Reid has had a hand in helping mature or build up entirely in the case of McNabb, or at least foster in their veteranship, we have Brett Favre, Donovan McNabb, and Michael Vick. So in my opinion, that is a pretty star-studded list. Now, I realize McNabb and Vick are not Hall of Famers, and we can debate that. I think Donovan McNabb should be a Hall of Famer. He never won a Super Bowl, and that is likely why he is not a Hall of Famer, which I don't love that argument, but I think Donovan McNabb's career and stats are certainly better than a lot of Hall of Famers are who just happen to win a Super Bowl. That's for a different video, but I think we can all agree that Andy Reid has had tremendous success with the QBs that have been put before him. So Andy Reid gets hired by the Chiefs in 2013 after being fired by the Eagles for, we can assume, not winning playoff games. That's kind of what it comes down to. You either don't win in the regular season or you don't win playoff games. That's how you lose your job. He was hired January 7th by the Chiefs, and the Chiefs had not won a playoff game since 1993. So 20 years had passed. They hadn't won a playoff game, so they bring in this veteran, this offensive mind in Andy Reid. Andy Reid, in less than 2 months, trades for Alex Smith. Alex Smith had been with the 49ers for 5 years previously, and he goes after him, and we'll talk about that next. And Alex Smith plays for Andy Reid from 2013 to 2018. Now let's talk about Alex Smith, because I think this is absolutely fascinating, and it starts to build the argument for why Patrick Mahomes is a system QB, and that'll make sense in a second. So what is perfect for this argument is that Alex Smith played 5 seasons where he started at least 10 games for the 49ers, and he played 5 seasons where he started at least 10 games for the Chiefs. So the sample size we're comparing is very similar. Now, you will see over here are attempts, yards, touchdowns, QB rating, and interceptions. And I have them color-coded. So if we look at his best seasons in attempts, his 5 top seasons in attempts are with the Chiefs. Okay, his worst Chiefs season for attempts is higher than his best San Francisco season for attempts, if you're following me here. Same with yards. His worst yard season on the Chiefs was higher than his best yard season on the 49ers. His touchdowns, only 1 season for the 49ers, passed his top 5 for the Chiefs, and it was at the bottom. So he had 4 top seasons throwing for the Chiefs. Then his 5th one, touchdown totals, were for San Francisco, and then he had his 6th were for the Chiefs. His QB rating, same thing, okay? His four of his top 5 QB ratings were for the Chiefs, 1 was for the 49ers, and his interceptions, he threw more interceptions with the 49ers, okay? Having less pass attempts than any of his Chiefs seasons than he did with the Chiefs. He only had 1 season of these total 10 seasons that fell under the Chiefs with his interceptions. For the Chiefs, he also made 3 Pro Bowls, and he made none with the 49ers, and he had 4 playoff appearances with the Chiefs and none for the 49ers. So what does this mean? There's a couple ways to think about this. The most blanket, vanilla, easiest way is that Andy Reid and Matt Nagy / Eric Bieniemy and that staff made Alex Smith. Okay, you can see that the 49ers for 5 years didn't do much with him, and when he goes to the Chiefs, he has his best 5 years ever in the NFL. Now, the counter argument that I could see is, well, you know, he was a rookie with the 49ers, and then he was a sophomore with the 49ers. You know, he kind of is growing. Yeah, you can make all those arguments. Now, I will say none of these stats are including his rookie year, so we can kind of throw that out. But ultimately, my claim for Alex Smith is, and I think a lot of people's claim for Alex Smith is, Alex Smith was made by Andy Reid. Andy Reid helped this guy succeed. And then all of a sudden, when Patrick Mahomes comes in, we don't talk about it in the same language. And I think that's fascinating. And so let's move forward. So what was Alex Smith's best year in his 5 years with Kansas City? Well, it was his last year. It was 2017, the year before Patrick Mahomes started, and the year that Patrick Mahomes was a rookie sitting on the sideline watching Alex Smith. I think this all plays into it. If we look at 2017, he had a career year, and I mean career. I mean San Francisco, I mean Kansas City, I mean Washington. He had a career year in yards at 4,000, in touchdowns at 26. It was his lowest interception percentage. It was his highest QBR and quarterback rating at 105. Now, how does this translate to the league in 2017? He was 8th in yards, 9th in touchdowns, 1st in interception ratio, and 1st in QB rate. So to say this, that the jump from Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes was insane, I think is just wrong. Alex Smith had a tremendous year in 2017 in a system that Patrick Mahomes would go on to inherit not more than 1 year later. Some other things I think are interesting. This was Tyreek Hill's 2nd year in the league. He had 1,100 yards. It was also Tyreek Hill's highest catch percentage for his entire career, meaning, For balls that hit his hands, he caught the most from Alex Smith than any other QB he's played with. As for Travis Kelce, this was his 4th year in the league. This was his second 1,000-yard season. He had a previous 1,000-yard season with Alex Smith in 2016, and he had 8 touchdowns. And a lot of people are gonna make the argument for Patrick Mahomes that, you know, he doesn't have anything around him now, right? That's what people say. Like, Tyreek Hill's gone. Yeah, he's Travis Kelce, but nobody else does anything. Well, look what Alex Smith had in 2017. The next highest receiver in yards was Albert Wilson with 500 yards, followed by Demarcus Robinson with 200 yards. So Alex Smith did not have much to work with either outside of these two guys that would then go on to be handed to Patrick Mahomes for the next 4 years. So you might be sitting here saying, well, Alex Smith was a dog. What happened? He was 1-4 in playoff games. All 5 years with Kansas City, he makes the playoffs. He only wins one of them, and then they lose the next game. So that is why the Chiefs looked to trade Alex Smith and ended up trading Alex Smith to start 2018. So what happens in 2018? Well, Mahomes, like I said, gets to spend his entire rookie year behind Alex Smith during Alex Smith's best season. That matters, okay? That is a big piece of this puzzle. Smith is then traded to Washington because of his lack of playoff success. Matt Nagy leaves for Chicago. Eric Bieniemy gets promoted from running back coach to offensive coordinator. Here is the bottom line. In 2018, Mahomes inherits a staff and a core offense that had success for 5+ seasons and was at its peak, okay? He comes in at a time where Alex Smith just had his best year in over 12, 14 years of the NFL, if we look at the longevity of his career. And Patrick Mahomes walks into that, guys. Like, that is a massive piece of this puzzle that people never talk about. They talk about his whoop-de-doo, his doo-dah days, his sidearms, his grenade bomb. It's deeper than that. And that's what I'm trying to show you. Here's my concession. Mahomes' stats are not up for debate. I will not sit here and try to say, well, his stats aren't good enough. Well, his stats aren't. He has some of the best stats we've ever seen, guys. I'm not sitting here saying that he's not good or he's not talented or his stat. I want to look at how and why his stats are good. And I've already laid the groundwork and explained that I think a lot of it has to do with the system he's in and the people around him, including coaches and players, which is why I think he is a system QB. But let's talk about specifically some of his stats. The first fascinating piece is his red zone passing attempts. I went back and I looked from 2018 to 2023. How many times is Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball in the red zone? And why does this matter? It's more yards and it's more touchdowns. And that's what people are going to point to for quarterback stats. When they talk about, is a quarterback good? Is a quarterback a Hall of Famer? Is a quarterback this, that, and the other? It's going to be yards and touchdowns. So inside the 20-yard line and inside the 10-yard line in 2018, the Chiefs threw the ball the most and the second most time for those two categories, okay? Opportunities galore for Patrick Mahomes. And why does this also matter? A lot of teams in the red zone are going to run the ball, okay? You're that close to the end zone. The offensive game plan is typically to run the ball, okay? In 2019, he was injured for 2 games, so his data is like just outside the top 10, but he missed 2 games. And if you look at his averages, he's averaging 5 to 10. I'm not going to include his stats against him in 2019, so I'm not going to include it for him for this category. In 2020, he was 8th and 5th. In 2021, he was 6th and 6th. In 2022, he was 1st in both of these categories. And this year, so far, he's 3rd and 3rd. Look at 2022, because this is what people say. This was the number one counter argument I had on my TikTok was that, well, look what he did last year. Look what he did last year. Look what he did last year. Yeah. Look at the opportunities he had to do what he did last year. The Chiefs threw the ball 20 more times than the second place team inside the 20 and inside the 10. Do you understand what that means? It means that no other team was throwing even close, even a percentage, like 20% less than the Chiefs are doing. Now, listen to me clearly. I'm not taking away from Patrick Mahomes. And you can sit here and I'll give you the counter argument. It's, well, he makes the most of opportunities. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Okay. When he's given the opportunity, typically he does make the most of them. But I don't think we can sit here and say he's that much better than other people when other people don't get the same opportunity. So I put all of this on here to say, if you're going to talk about yards and you're going to talk about touchdowns, you at least need to say he is given opportunities to do that. The second stat is just simply passing attempts, and it's the same. Okay. 2018, he was 7th in the league. At times he threw the ball 2019, he was injured for 2 games, so his data is a little lower. 2025, 2022, and 2022, he was top 3, and this year he's second. You know who's first? And this is just fascinating to me. Who's first? Sam Howell. You know who Sam Howell's offensive coordinator is? Eric Bieniemy. All right, the guy that Patrick Mahomes had for the previous years. You think Eric Bieniemy likes to throw the ball? You think Eric Bieniemy likes to give his quarterbacks opportunities to showcase what they've got? All right, and so that he's always been top 10 at passing attempts. He's always had the opportunities to rack up the stats. Now, this third stat is a little petty, and I'm not sure if it really means anything, but I do think it's interesting. The third stat is yards per touchdown. In other words, when a receiver catches a touchdown from the quarterback, how far was that touchdown? If we look at the average length of Patrick Mahomes' touchdown passes in 2019, it was 17. That's pretty impressive. 2020, 13, probably league average. 2021, 8.5 lower. Last year, okay, people want to talk about last year, 4 yards was his average. He had 41 touchdowns, and his average was 4.5 yards. You can't put this any other way besides their offense was just letting Patrick Mahomes do what he does, okay? And what does that mean? Does that mean, and this is where we can debate, does that mean that the offense is rewarding a guy that they know is talented, or does that mean that he's maybe not as talented as he is given opportunities, okay? And that's where the debate can come in. And I think and you'll see what my opinion is in a second, but ultimately, without spoiling it, I think a lot of QBs could do what Mahomes does if they had opportunities. Only one of his touchdowns last year traveled more than 19 yards. That is unbelievable. If we look at a minimum of 15 touchdown passes last year, look where Patrick Mahomes ranks, all right? At the bottom, he had the lowest yards per touchdown in the league, meaning when they're inside the 20, they're not running the ball. They're letting Patrick Mahomes rack up stats. Some miscellaneous info that did not fit into any of these categories that I do think is interesting and worth noting is the 2 games that we talked about Patrick Mahomes missing in 2019. This is what Matt Moore did. Who's Matt Moore, you ask? Exactly, right? Just a guy. Just a backup quarterback. What was he able to do? Well, he had a 71 and 66% completion percentage. He had a touchdown and 2 touchdowns. He had 275 and 267 yards, and he had a rating over 100 both games. So what does that tell me? This is a very small sample size, so I'm not saying that this is the norm, but I'm telling you, and what this is telling me is that given the opportunity in this system, maybe an average to below average quarterback would be fine. Right? This proves to me, and again, I'm not taking anything away from Matt Moore, but I don't think anyone's going to sit here in front of me today and say Matt Moore is a Hall of Famer. Matt Moore is one of the best to ever do it. But given the opportunity, given the system, given the coaching, given the players that Mahomes had, look what Matt Moore was able to do. And I hate that there's not more data on this. I hate that we can't go through and say, how many other people could do this in the system? Because we haven't had that opportunity to see that. But the point is, given the opportunity, it has been done. The second point is that Hill's top 2 yards per season are with Miami. What does that mean? I don't really know. And it's also 2 of his best seasons. Now, Tyreek Hill has played 8 NFL seasons. And again, his top 2 yards are with Miami, both of them. So I just think Hill is very talented. And Hill is so dynamic, and Hill is so unique. And Hill, in some ways, made Patrick Mahomes. And we could debate that. But I think you can see Hill's importance to the Dolphins and to Tua. And I think it would be unfair to say, well, it's Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City and it's Tyreek Hill in Miami. I don't know if it's that black and white. So I just think we need to give more credit to Hill sometimes and not Patrick Mahomes. Third miscellaneous stat is that statistically, the AFC West has not been good in Patrick Mahomes' tenure. They have had 4 losing seasons overall as a division, not including Kansas City, including the other 3 teams, and only 1 winning season where the other 3 teams combined for 26 and 25. So barely a winning season. So he is getting to play 6 games against losing teams a season. So 6 out of 18 games, a third of his season is being played against teams that are bad, which I think does matter. I could come into more details about this. I haven't. His record is good against these teams, so I can't take anything away from him there. But I do think he's in one of the softer divisions in the NFL. So here's my conclusion. Here is my claim. Here is my take. Here is my opinion. And this can be debated, and that's fine. But based on what I've watched from Patrick Mahomes the last 5 years and the football I've watched over the last 20-some years, Here's what I've decided about Patrick Mahomes. I believe, first, that Patrick Mahomes is overrated by the media and fans. Based on his level of play, based on his abilities, media and fans overinflate that, overrate that. The second thing, and this number is a little bit just generic, 15, we could argue that, but I think roughly 15 quarterbacks could do what Patrick Mahomes does if they were given the weapons, the staff, and the opportunities to do so. If Patrick Mahomes disappeared tomorrow and you threw in, you spun a wheel, okay, for NFL quarterbacks right now, and you threw whoever it landed on in there, I'd say that half the time that QB could do what Patrick Mahomes does, okay? And that's probably going to upset a lot of people, and that's where the argument's going to come in. That's fine. That's just my belief. My third point is that Andy Reid and Tyreek Hill deserve more credit for the success, and Travis Kelce, of Patrick Mahomes. I think those three don't get talked enough about, and it is Patrick Mahomes who gets all the credit, which is normal for a quarterback position, but that is my third opinion. My fourth opinion. Are you ready? Here it is. Patrick Mahomes is not a top 10 quarterback of all time. And I put yet, okay? I put yet. I'm not saying he's not going to be, okay? But right now, to throw him in conversations with some of the greatest of all time, I think is disrespectful. The guy has played 5 full seasons, okay? Plenty of QBs in the NFL have played 5 solid seasons. And then they fall off, and then we forget about them. I don't think Patrick Mahomes is going to fall off, but I think it's too early to say that. What makes, and another person brought this up, well, would you say this about Brady? Would you say this about Manning? No. And the difference is Manning and Brady both did it for 2 different organizations, 2 different systems, 2 different sets of staff, 2 different sets of players. They both won Super Bowls in 2 different spots with 2. And that is not something that Patrick Mahomes has done. And I don't know if we'll ever get to see Patrick Mahomes do that. And when it's all said and done, I'll come back here and I'll eat crow if I'm wrong. And I'll say I was wrong about Patrick Mahomes. All right, this is just more of an opinion right now and a prediction right now. So finally, my final take is Patrick Mahomes is a product of his environment and would look average or, the same as other quarterbacks if he was traded to or inherited another system or team. If you sat and watched all this, you are the real MVP, not Patrick Mahomes, not Tua, not Tyreek Hill. It's you. I appreciate it. Seriously, leave a comment. If I'm foolish, let me know. I can take it. That's the whole point. That is what I want Green Beans got to be about. Community, okay? Discourse, all right? Conversation. Let me know if I'm crazy. Let me know what you think. And if I make a good point, by golly, let me know I made a good point. All right. We'll see you next time.